Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kitana. If you're new here, welcome. In this video, we're getting into the March predictions with March just a few short days away. By the end of this video, you're going to know what March has in store in general for the collective, as well as for your specific zodiac sign. And right now in this timestamp, we'll go over the top major events you should look out for in March, the astrological events, and then we'll get into how it impacts your sign in your sign timestamp. And you watch this video, it's best to watch it for your rising sign. You can watch it for your sun or moon as well. I think most people just watch it for their big three, but your rising sign is the most relevant for this prediction and for all the predictions on my channel. So we'll get into the top events to look out for in March. So the first event to look out for in March is March 4th. So March 4th, Mars enters Gemini, and I will say Mars is a key planet to look out for in the month of March. Mars will be conjunct the North Node towards the end of the month, which I'll make a separate video about, so you guys should subscribe so you don't miss that video. But Mars is this planet of energy, of aggression, of conflict, and it's moving into the sign of Gemini. It's been in Taurus, where it's been steady, and it's been more productive in the earth sign of Taurus, but as it goes into Gemini, it gets a little bit more chaotic. It gets a little bit more restless. It manifests as the sense of randomness and scatteredness. So we'll feel that sense of conflict as well in our lives and with our peers. Gemini rules communication, so there's that sense of aggressive speaking, talking, conflict, online arguments. Those kind of things are more likely to happen in March because Mars is going into Gemini and it's going to be conjunct the North Node, and Mars is the planet of conflict and aggression. The key word for Mars being in Gemini during March is restlessness. So that brings me into the second event, which is March 13th, the new moon. The new moon is going to be in Pisces. The sun enters Pisces on February 18th, so it's Pisces season in most of March. And this new moon in Pisces is interesting because it's conjunct Venus, it's conjunct Neptune, so it takes on this very creative, romantic theme. And even though it's a new moon, this energy does manifest as endings. It manifests as certain purgings and cleansing out of things in our life that no longer serves us. And Pisces is the last zodiac sign, so it is that theme of endings. Even though it's a new moon in March, it's kind of takes on this very finale sort of theme with this new moon on the 13th. That brings me to the third event, which is Mercury in Pisces. So Mercury heads into Pisces March 15th, and this really magnifies our urge to dig deeper into spiritual knowledge, dig deeper into our own thoughts. Mercury in Pisces is almost like a second retrograde because Pisces is a sign that is more isolated, it's more inwardly drawn, and Mercury is more of an expressive energy. So when Mercury is in Pisces, I feel like the way we communicate and express ourselves might be a little bit more confusing, a little bit more less logical, but more intuitive. So there's a strong sense of intuition and intuitive speaking, talking, and doing in March rather than being too logical. Since Mars is going to be in Gemini, conflict is more likely. Mercury in Pisces, there's also that sense of being misunderstood with how you speak with people, and Mercury in Pisces does urge us to be more creative with our words, get into poetry, writing, songwriting, listening to music, and being less outspoken but more inwardly contemplative with Mercury in Pisces. March 20th, the sun enters Aries, so hello Aries season. That's exciting. Again, Pisces is the last sign. It's the closing out of the zodiac. So even though it's like interesting energy in March with Mars being in Gemini, I feel like there's this theme of like ending to beginning, and then spring happens in April. So there's that strong sense of endings in March. Sun enters Aries on the 20th, so we get more focused on our own efforts and get more focused on how we direct our energy, whereas Pisces is a little bit more confused and creative. Aries wants to bring that energy in and focus a little bit more. So we'll feel that towards the end of March, March 20th. March 21st, Venus enters Aries. So again, we're focused more on our material possessions, on our own desires, our gains, being more focused and ambitious and individualistic about what we want. And we'll feel that kind of shift from being focused on the collective with Pisces and then to focused on ourselves with Aries. And March 28th, last but not least, full moon in Libra. So this full moon It's also another interesting full moon because it's going to be conjunct Chiron, also opposite Venus. So with this Aries Libra axis, the full moon's in Libra. It's really about using the effort we have within ourselves to heal our any issues we have, heal our issues with other people. There's a strong theme of how we relate to the world with this full moon, and realizing how we relate to the world, how we can heal our conflicts with people. Since there's that strong theme of conflicts throughout March, conflict resolution is a huge theme at the end of the month. So you might be doing a lot of mending of relationships at the end of the month, maybe mending of relationships with yourself, with people around you, but relationships is strong with this full moon in Libra, and healing those. And healing is the huge word for March. Hey Aries, let's get into the month of March for you and talk about what March has in store for you. March is a month that is really about healing and conflict, as well as conflict resolution, and we're going to get into how these themes incorporate themselves into your personal life. So this is more accurate for tropical Aries risings, moons, or suns. You can watch this video for your sun, moon, and rising sign, but rising is the most relevant for this prediction. So Aries, from now until March 20th, the sun will be in your 12th house. The sun will be in Pisces. It's Pisces season. And so Pisces season happening in your 12th house manifests as you being really focused on your own personal journey, focused on your own inner world, and being a little bit more isolated than usual, and really focused on your own creative endeavors. Interestingly enough, in February, the sun is going to be conjunct Venus. So with that energy happening in your 12th house, you feel more urged to focus on your creative projects, focused on, let's say, music or art or whatever you do for creativity, fashion. You're really focused on that in a more private way. In Aries season, you might publish something new, but during March, you might be really working on that behind the scenes, being more private about your projects, not telling anyone, keeping it a secret, and then maybe you launch something in April after you've been working on it throughout Pisces season and throughout March with the sun and Venus in your 12th house. And on March 13th, the new moon in Pisces also happens in your 12th house. So this new moon in Pisces is very interesting as well because it is conjunct Venus, it's conjunct Neptune. So again, there's this very creative, very romantic theme here. And this new moon is unique because it signals the sense of clearing out things that no longer serve us, clearing out certain things that keep us blocked, and this theme of healing as well. So even though it's a new moon, it takes on this theme of endings as well. And with this new moon happening in your 12th house, you're doing a lot of endings and purgings as it comes to your psychological mind, and clearing out any thoughts or thought patterns or things that remind you of the past. Before you head into your own season, Aries season, you're clearing out a lot of baggage in your life with this new moon. Ironically, even though it's a new moon, you're doing a lot of clearing out since it's happening in your 12th house of endings. And that brings us into Mars. Now, Mars is a major planet to watch out for in March. Mars will be conjunct the North Node towards the latter half of the month, which I'll be doing a separate video about. It's a whole event on its own, but Mars moves into Gemini on March 4th. So this means for you, Aries, Mars moves into your third house, and Mars moving into Gemini causes a lot of restlessness. It might cause conflict, and for you, Aries, it might cause conflict and restlessness with your peers, with your colleagues. When it comes to communication for you in March, you might be a little bit more aggressive with your speech. You might be a little bit more likely to snap back at people, talk back to people, and have more conflict online as well. So Mars is aggressive energy. Mars is your chart ruler, so you know a thing or two about Mars. But Mars, it does cause conflict. It causes disagreements. So you might feel that with your peers since it's happening in your third house. But on the brighter side of Mars being in your third house, it gives you a lot of drive to achieve what you need to achieve. It gives you a lot of courage. It gives you a lot of ambition. It gives you a lot of focus and boldness to achieve what you want. So there's a positive with Mars being in your third house, but also the negative is it causes conflict a little bit with your speech and communication. But the bright side is that it gives you a lot of drive to accomplish all of the projects you want. And maybe if you're doing some private projects, you have a lot of focus and energy on that. And then, like I said, maybe in April you publish it. And last but not least, the Libra full moon happens on March 28th. Libra is your 7th house ruler. It's your 7th house sign. So this full moon's happening in your 7th first house axis. And this Libra full moon takes a lot into consideration the theme of conflict resolution. So you yourself might be feeling a lot of this strong theme of conflict in your life with other people, but by the end of the month, with the full moon in Libra, you have that urge to want to mend conflict or mend certain relationships with people, fix any disagreements you've had throughout the month. It really brings in the sense of wanting to create balance, wanting to create harmony, wanting to create that level ground with other people and not have too much strife or disharmony that may have been caused with Mars being in your third house in Gemini. And it also contrasts, for you Aries, it contrasts how you take care of your own individuality versus how you consider other people. Another main theme with this full moon in your 7th house is that it brings to light that theme of individual and self versus other people, which is a lifelong theme for you Aries, since you're an Aries rising and Libra is your 7th house. This full moon's happening in your home axis, and it brings to mind like that full circle moment of how you individuate, how you express yourself and take into consideration your own needs versus how you consider other people. So you might be having a contemplative moment of how you can consider more people, how you can be more amicable, how you can be more personable, how you can be more friendly and not be too blunt with words, not be too direct with people, but really creating that balance within your partnerships and putting in the effort you need to heal those partnerships in your life and create that balance between self versus others. And with that being said, I have the full list of events happening in March that you need to know posted on my Instagram, so you guys can head to my Instagram at astrokit to save that post. Also subscribe to my channel, you don't want to miss the Mars Rahu conjunction video, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and tell me down below how you're feeling about March so far, and I'll see you Aries in my next video. Hey Taurus, here is the month of March and what you can expect to happen in your personal life based on the astrological events and how these events will really manifest in your daily life. Now, the main themes for March are healing, conflict, as well as conflict resolution. It also takes on a strong theme of spirituality because it is Pisces season. So the first event we'll talk about is that the sun from now until March 20th is going to be in the sign of Pisces. This means that the sun will be in your 11th house, and during the month of March you're going to feel this strong urge to collaborate with people, to communicate with people, to use social media to further your desires or your goals. March for you Taurus takes on this theme of social networking, and also there's that strong theme of gains with the 11th house, gaining money, gaining status, gaining opportunities. So you might be doing that in March, or gaining new opportunities, creating new opportunities for yourself, and really seeking out ways to make more money, invest your money better, and potentially somehow combining social networking with your way of gaining things and gaining money, and maybe networking with the right people. 11th house does rule influential people, so you might be in contact with influential people to gain new opportunities in your life throughout the month of March. And that brings us into the new moon on March 13th. This new moon is interesting because it will be conjunct Venus, it'll be conjunct Neptune, so it takes on this very romantic, very spiritual, very creative theme. And again, it's happening in your Pisces 11th house. And for you, this specifically means getting really creative about your desires, getting creative about what your long-term vision is for yourself and your life, and manifesting that. Pisces is an extremely creative energy, and Pisces has a lot to do with imagination. So during this new moon, it's beneficial to you, as well as very inspiring to you, to envision the life you have for yourself, envision your goals, envision your desires, envision all of the grand things you want to happen in your life, and manifest them with this new moon. And you'll be feeling this sense of how to manifest those things in a creative way, in a more fluid way. Pisces is a very fluid energy. It's not too logical, it's not too concrete, but it's very spiritual and fluid. So you might be manifesting those things in a very spiritual, fluid way, tapping into your feminine energy in order to manifest those desires and long-term goals. Also, the key thing to look out for in March is Mars. So Mars is this key planet throughout the month of March that will be causing a little bit of havoc, a lot of change as well, because on March 4th, Mars goes into Gemini. So Mars has been in your sign, actually, and with Mars being in Taurus, it's been really grounded, it's been focused, And we've seen the themes of money and finance be strong with Mars being in Taurus. And Mars is very strong in Taurus. However, Mars going into Gemini, it creates more of a restless energy, more of a chaotic energy. And Mars rules conflict. Gemini is communication. So you can expect a little bit more conflict through communication, conflict with other people. It's a very social month for you. So there might be some hiccups when it comes to disagreements with other people or conflict with other people. And Mars being in Gemini, it's going to be in your second house. And this gives you more of a sharp tongue. The second house rules how we speak in our speech. So throughout the month of March, you might find that you have a sharper tongue with people. You have no patience when it comes to reacting to certain things. You have a little bit more of aggressive speech with people, and you might say things very impulsively throughout the month of March. So you have to be more aware of your speech and how you communicate with people, especially since Mars will be in your second house. And you also might have impulsivity with your finances. So Mars is a very impatient energy. It's quick, it's fast, and having it in your second house of finances and possessions, this might manifest as being a little bit more impulsive with your money. And then speaking of speech, the second house also rules the mouth too. So it rules what we put in our mouths. So you might, for some Taurus, this can happen where like you might burn your mouth, or you might eat something too hot, which seems like a simple thing, but it's something that might happen a few times throughout the month of March for you, since Mars is going to be in your second house. So that's one thing to look out for. And then Mars will also be conjunct the North Node towards the end of the month, but I'll be making a separate video about Mars conjunct Rahu because it's a whole event that needs its own video. So subscribe so you don't miss that video. But in general, Taurus, you need to know that Mars being in your second house does manifest as more impulsivity and aggressiveness when it comes to your speech, how you speak to people, your reactions to people in general, also with your money as well. But I will say the bright side of Mars being in your second house is that it makes you more logical and strategic with your finances. It makes you more focused. Mars, at the end of the day, does represent energy, and the way you channel that energy is up to you. And so you can channel that strong Martian energy into being strategic about your investments, your finances. The 11th house is also lit up for you in March. So again, finances, money, investments is a strong theme here. So you can manifest that strong Martian energy into creating more strategic financial long-term plans. And that brings us to the last event, which is the Libra full moon. So this Libra full moon is happening on the 28th of March, and it's happening in your 6th house of health, diet, and routine. And this Libra full moon is very necessary after Mars being in Gemini, Mars being conjunct Rahu throughout the month, because Libra wants to bring balance, it wants to bring harmony. So during this time, it's a moment where we bring more conflict resolution to our lives, conflict resolution to our relationships, and having it in your 6th house, you might be bringing more balance, harmony, and conflict resolution to your relationships with your coworkers, with people you work with, even if you work for yourself, maybe your employees, your assistants, anybody you work with in a professional sense, you might be bringing more conflict resolution with them if you've got into some debates throughout the month. And it also brings into your awareness the harmony and necessary effort you need to put into your health, your diet, your routine, and maybe healing your mental health, bringing more balance to your mind. 6th house does rule stress, so you might be feeling this need to balance out and level out your stress levels towards the end of the month, and realizing how you can create a more mentally healthy routine for yourself. And with that being said, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up, and stay tuned for the Mars conjunct Rahu video, which will be on my channel shortly. On my Instagram, I have the full list of events to look out for in March, so you guys don't want to miss those. Head to my Instagram at AstroKit to save that post, and comment down below how you feel about March so far, what's your feeling about it, and I'll see you Taurus in my next video. Hey Gemini, here is your March prediction and what you can expect to happen in your daily life throughout the month of March 2021. Now this will be more accurate for Gemini risings. You can watch this video for your sun, moon, and rising, but rising sign is going to be the most relevant, most accurate for this prediction and for all the predictions I do on my channel. And so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss those predictions, and give this video a thumbs up as well. And we're going to get into what March has in store for you and what you can really expect to happen in your life in terms of major themes. So the first thing we'll touch on is that the sun is going to be in Pisces starting now until March 20th. This means that the sun is going to be in your 10th house. So there's this huge 10th house focus for you in the month of March, where you're really focused on your career, you're focused on your future, you're focused on your legacy. And during March, you might find yourself being really imaginative and really creative with your career, with creative projects within your career. Whatever you do for work, you take on more of a creative energy and approach to what you do. And with also the sun being in your 10th house during the month, you might find yourself really focused on your reputation, focused on increasing your reputation, focused on improving your reputation, and focused on reaching out to more people. And that brings us into the new moon. So the new moon happens on March 13th. It's in the sign of Pisces, again in your 10th house. And this new moon, it really takes on this very fluid theme because it's going to be conjunct Neptune. It'll be conjunct Venus as well. So romance, creativity, and this really fluid feminine theme is going to be strong with this new moon. And what this means for you is really getting into this imaginative space of what you want your legacy to be, what you want your career to be, what you want to be known for in the world, and really thinking about your future in terms of how you want to expand it. Jupiter is still relevant here because Jupiter rules Pisces, it rules your 10th house, it rules this theme of expansion. So you're focused on expanding your reputation, expanding your legacy, what you want to go down in history for, and really imagining your whole life and your whole life path in terms of your goals, your ambitions, and what you want your reputation to be to the world. Also, new moon in your 10th house, sun in the 10th house does indicate more recognition globally, recognition online, for example, getting more status online, maybe someone influential, somebody in power, someone who has authority, gives you some sort of cosign or leg up on the ladder. 10th house energy does indicate a raise in status. So you might find that happening to you in March, raise in status, raise in public recognition, raise in fame, etc., especially around the new moon in Pisces in your 10th house. That brings us into Mars. So Mars is the planet you really want to look out for in March. Now, Mars is going to be going into Gemini on March 4th. So it's going into your first house. So this is something that really impacts you quite heavily, Gemini, especially Gemini risings watching this. And Mars going into Gemini is interesting because Mars has been in Taurus. Mars does well in Taurus. Mars is focused, it's grounded, it's productive in Taurus, but as it goes into Gemini, and it's in Gemini for most of the month and then into April, it takes on more of a scattered energy. It takes on more of a unfocused energy. It can take on more of an energy of conflict, especially conflict through communication. And since Gemini is your sign, you're a Gemini rising possibly, or sun or moon, you might find yourself feeling a little bit more agitated, impulsive, especially when it comes to communicating with other people. You might say things that are a little bit more mean or harsh with people. You might be more sharp-tongued with people, a little bit more sassy with people. I feel like Geminis are already pretty sassy, but Mars in your first house indicates being very aggressive with your speech. So that is very possible with Mars being a Gemini in your first house. But the positive part is that Mars represents just pure energy. It's very potent energy. It's very quick, impulsive, and so the way you can manifest that energy is really up to you. And so one of the positive ways that Mars being in your first house will manifest is that you can feel more energetic, more ambitious, more bold. You have almost no sense of like self-doubt. You have this sense of like, I can do anything, I can speak anything, which can get a little bit harsh for some people depending on how you communicate, but it does indicate that sense of boldness and not really second guessing yourself, being very unapologetic, being very direct with people, direct with your goals, and just being ambitious and goal oriented. So throughout the month, you're going to find yourself being very energetic, feeling very impulsive, not really feeling like you want to wait for anything, wait for anyone, just get up, go, and do your thing. And with your 10th house also activated, it's like you feel very ambitious and focusing like that Martian energy towards your career and advancing your career goals, advancing whatever your self-interests are. So that's really the positive side of Mars, is that it's really productive when it comes to your career and advancing your goals. It might get a little bit dicey or mixy when it comes to trying to keep peace with people or trying to be patient or nice with people, especially when it comes to what you speak or how you communicate with them. And that brings us into the last event, which is the full moon in Libra on March 28th. Now, this full moon in Libra happens in your 5th house, and this full moon is interesting because it will be conjunct Chiron. The sun will be conjunct Chiron. It'll be opposite Venus. So with those aspects, there's that strong theme of resolution and healing. Libra is ultimately that sign that represents conflict resolution. So throughout the month, you might get into some arguments, get into some disagreements with people, possibly with Mars, especially in your 1st house, especially conjunct the North Node. But with this full moon in Libra, it does bring everything full circle, where you might do some mending of relationships. You might apologize for things you said throughout the month. You might do some conflict resolution with people. But specifically with the full moon in Libra in your 5th house, you're having a very contemplative moment of your own individuality, of your own creative talents, your hobbies, really realizing your desires and how you can incorporate your desires into your relationships, how you can collaborate with other people to manifest your desires. There's that strong theme for you in March of like achieving things, achieving your goals, achieving your long-term goals, and focusing on your reputation, your legacy, your identity, your individuality. And this full moon in Libra brings into your consciousness that theme of how can you cultivate your own self-interest, but also balance that with collaborating with people. How can you bring other people into your team, into your goals, into your desires, and creating that balance between your desires and other people's desires, and how those things overlap, if they overlap or not, and how you can create balance between those two ends of the spectrum. And with that being said, for the full list of events happening in March, head to my Instagram at AstroKit, where I'll have the full list on a post on my Instagram, so you guys can save that post. Also subscribe to my channel so you don't miss my next video. Give this video a thumbs up. Also stay tuned for the Mars conjunct Rahu video, which will be a separate video from this one. And tell me down below how you feel about March so far, what you have planned, and if you're excited or not, tell me down below, and I'll see you Geminis in my next video. Hey Cancer, here is your prediction for the month of March and what you can expect in your personal day-to-day life in March 2021. Now, March 2021 is a month that does deal with the themes of healing, conflict, as well as conflict resolution. It is Pisces season for most of the month, so it takes on this very spiritual theme. And we're going to get into how your life will manifest for you during the month. Now, this is more accurate for Cancer risings. You can watch it for your sun sign or your moon sign, but rising sign is more relevant for my prediction videos on my channel. So Cancer rising, this is for you. For Cancer sun, Cancer moon, that works too. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and we're going to get into these events and see how they're affecting you. So the first thing we'll talk about is that from now until March 20th, the sun will be in Pisces. So this is going to be happening in your 9th house. The sun will be in your 9th house. Pisces season is lighting up your 9th house. So during this time, you're going to be focused on your spirituality, your consciousness. You might be focused on expanding your consciousness, gaining more knowledge, gaining more wisdom when it comes to spiritual topics, doing a lot of research. Maybe you're studying a new language, for example. You're studying a new philosophy. Getting more into religion, for example, and digging deep into what your beliefs are, what your opinions are, and what you believe to be true in a philosophical way, religious way, or a spiritual way. And the sun being in your 9th house is also a fortunate placement, which gives you a lot of optimism and hope for the future during the month of March. And that brings us into March 13th. On March 13th, there is a new moon in the sign of Pisces. Again, it's happening in your 9th house, so you're feeling this 9th house energy be really lit up for you. And this new moon takes on a very spiritual theme, this very creative theme. It's conjunct Neptune, conjunct Venus. So we have this theme of romance, we have this theme of creativity. And having this energy in your 9th house represents you potentially manifesting, potentially using your creative feminine energy to manifest the future that you want. 9th house does deal with the future. It deals with future outcomes. It deals with your purpose in life and what you believe your purpose is in order to manifest that into your reality. So during this new moon, you might be setting intention, manifesting new opportunities into your life. You might be really contemplating travel, for example, manifesting a way to travel somewhere, get money for travel, manifest an opportunity to travel. It's also a time where you feel more connected to God, you feel more connected to your religion, connected to your philosophy in life, anything that really anchors you down in a philosophical sense. You're really feeling that security within that knowledge during this new moon in Pisces in your 9th house on the 13th. And that brings us into Mars. So Mars is the planet you want to look out for in March. It is this planet that's causing a bit of havoc. It's causing a lot of change in March. And that's because Mars is going from Taurus to Gemini. So Mars has been in Taurus for a while now, and Mars does well in Taurus. Mars is grounded in Taurus. It's directed in Taurus. It's energy that is more productive. However, when Mars goes into Gemini, that Martian energy gets a little bit more scattered. Gemini rules communication. Mars deals with conflict. And Mars really represents this theme of energy. And when Mars is in Gemini, that energy can be misdirected. It can be confused. It can be scattered. It's really hard to focus that energy in when it's in Gemini versus when it's in Taurus. And so this means that Mars is going into your 12th house of Gemini. And Mars being in your 12th house is a more challenging position because Mars is energy. Mars is forward movement. It's action. And when it's in the 12th house, it stagnates a bit. So you might feel in March this feeling or theme in your life of being a little bit lethargic, feeling tired, not having energy, not having that sense of direction. Mars can be quite directionless in the 12th house, so you might feel that sense of directionlessness in life. And on top of that, with Mars being in Gemini, it might create some misunderstandings with your peers. It might create miscommunications. It might create gossip behind your back. Someone having secret conversations about you that are slanderous, for example, people talking crap about you behind your back in like group chats or online or things like that. So you kind of that's something to look out for with Mars being in Gemini in your 12th house, people talking about you, gossip, etc. You might be gossiping, but also it's people also doing that towards you without you knowing. And Mars being in your 12th house also triggers you to feel more isolated or direct your energy inward, direct your actions inward. And with Mars energy, again, it's that theme of action, forward movement, but when it's in the 12th house, it kind of brings that in a little bit. So you might be a little bit more isolated and directing your actions more within rather than projecting them outward when Mars is in Gemini in your 12th house. And that brings us into the last event of the month, which is the Libra full moon. Now this full moon happens on March 28th. It happens in your 4th house. This full moon has a lot to deal with conflict resolution. Throughout the month of March, there's that theme of conflict since Mars will be in Gemini and Mars will be conjunct the North Node. So conflict is very much a theme in all of our lives, and especially for you with it in your 12th house. But towards the end of the month, we might have this full circle moment where we get more into this vibration of mending our disagreements with people, mending our relationships with people. And for you, since it's in your 4th house, you might feel this urge to mend relationships with your family. If you're not literally mending relationships with your family members, you might be just contemplating your relationships with how you interact with your family. How do you balance having your own individual sense of autonomy versus how do you help your family and support people that you consider family or support people that live in your household. I feel like with Cancer placements, you guys can be very supportive and caring of other people, but sometimes that can get into that spectrum of ignoring yourself or neglecting yourself. So this is the full moon where you kind of have that ping pong debate in your mind between, okay, how am I considering myself versus how am I considering my family members, and creating balance between those two things, healing that relationship you have with your family and healing that relationship you have with your ancestors as well. And with that being said, for the full list of March events that you don't want to miss, head to my Instagram at AstroKit. I have the posts so you guys can save that. Also subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the Mars Rahu conjunction video I'll be posting shortly. And don't forget to like this video and tell me down below how you feel about March so far. If you have a good feeling about it, bad feeling, etc., tell me down below. And I'll see you Cancers in my next video. Hey Leo, here is your prediction for the month of March and what you can expect in your personal life throughout March 2021. Now this is more accurate for tropical Leo risings. You can watch this for your moon sign as well, or your sun sign. So on my predictions on my channel, you can watch your sun, moon, or rising, but rising sign is the most relevant when it comes to accuracy. With that being said, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video, and let's get into these events in March and how they will impact you personally. So the first one we'll talk about is the sun going into Pisces. So it is Pisces season for the most of March. Starting now until March 20th, the sun will be in Pisces in your 8th house. So for the month of March, your 8th house is lit up, and this means that your focus, your awareness is on your psychological mind. It's on this deeper side to life. You're really thinking about deeper topics, occult topics, thinking about your shadow self, doing shadow work. The 8th house deals a lot with things we don't speak about on a regular basis. It deals with taboo things. So your mind might be on things that are more taboo, more occult, more secret, diving deep into your own psychology, for example, diving deep into less of the surface level of life, but getting below that surface level. And the interesting thing that might happen for you in March with the sun being in your 8th house is you might be thinking of how to remove psychological blockages from your mind, thinking about how to clear your psychological mind in order to manifest new things into your life. And that brings me into the new moon in Pisces. So on March 13th, there is a new moon in Pisces in your 8th house. And this new moon, interestingly enough, has a lot to do with ending things and clearing out baggage in our lives. Even though it's a new moon, it's still in the sign of Pisces. It's Pisces season, and Pisces season has to do with endings. Pisces is the last zodiac sign, and especially with this new moon in your 8th house, it deals a lot with dissolving any psychological blockages you have. Pisces is such a fluid energy. It seeks to dissolve and transcend things, and you might be dissolving or transcending any fears you have, any blockages you have when it comes to your success, any mental blockages you have. And it's a powerful energy to have the sun and the new moon in your 8th house, because you become aware of any toxic thoughts you have. And you'll feel inspired to dissolve and get rid of and face your fears, dissolve your fears, get rid of your anxieties and doubts that you have about yourself, and ultimately transcend them, because that's what Pisces is all about, transcendence. And speaking of courage, that brings us into our next major event, which is Mars moving into Gemini on March 4th. Now, Mars is the planet to watch in March, because Mars will not only be going into Gemini, but also be conjunct the North Node for a good chunk of the month, which I'll do a separate video about because it's its own event, which has its own chaos attached to it, so stay tuned for that. But Mars going into Gemini represents this theme of scatteredness, this theme of communication, this theme of conflict through communication. And Mars has been in Taurus, which is very strong in Taurus since it's very grounded and directed and secure in an earth sign like Taurus. But having it be in Gemini, an air sign, it creates more misdirected energy, chaotic energy, restless energy. And this is happening in your 11th house. So Mars officially goes into your 11th house on March 4th. And this makes you, I'll give you guys the good and the bad. So the kind of challenging part with Mars being in Gemini, especially in your 11th house, Leo, is that it creates more conflict with people. It creates more disagreements with people. It creates, especially with 11th house energy, it's online disagreements, getting in Twitter arguments, for example, Twitter battles, or getting in arguments through social media in general might be a theme for you in March. So you definitely have to watch your tongue a bit on social media, watch what you post. Mars ultimately represents pure energy, and it's very impulsive. So having it in Gemini can make you very impulsive with your words, impulsive with what you put online, impulsive with how you communicate with people, your peers, and it can create some conflict for you socially. And that's kind of like the more challenging side of Mars and Gemini in your 11th house. But the good part about it is that Mars, again, it's pure energy, and you can direct that energy really any way you want. And 11th house is desires, it's long-term goals. So how that can manifest for you, Leo, is being really adamant and being so vigilant and very direct and blunt when it comes to pursuing your long-term goals, your long-term desires, and really directing that Martian energy to achieve those things. 11th house is like the vision we have for ourselves, the vision we have for our life goals, if you will. And so you're really having this ambitious energy, cultivating towards achieving those things. And Mars will give you that laser sharp focus and strategy when it comes to achieving those goals. So that's the good part and bad part with Mars being in your 11th house for the month and a little bit into April, is that it creates conflict, but it also creates a lot of ambition and focus and boldness and courage to achieve your long-term desires, and it gives you the ability to create strategy to achieve those things. The last event we have for the month is the full moon in Libra. This full moon happens on March 28th. It's happening in your 3rd house, Leo, and this full moon is such a full circle moment for the month of March, because throughout March we have this Mars energy activated, Mars in Gemini, Mars conjunct Rahu, and it creates its own chaos and conflict especially. And Libra ultimately does want balance, it wants harmony, it wants equilibrium. And during this full moon, we might have that urge to create more balance, mend any conflicts we've had throughout the month, especially for you, since you might have some conflicts socially with this full moon in Libra. You have that urge to want to mend conflicts, apologize to people, do a lot of conflict resolution with this full moon. And especially with it in your 3rd house, you're contemplating how to have more harmonious contact and have more harmonious interactions with your peers, create more equality with your peers, create more of a personal relationship with your peers and co-workers or siblings. This full moon in Libra really inspires you to have more harmony when it comes to communicating with your peers, create more harmonious bonds with people, being more personable with people, and having this full moon occur in the Aries Libra axis. It carries this very social theme of social equilibriums, but also with you personally, it's happening in your 3rd house, and 3rd house deals with our opinions, 9th house is about our beliefs. So you might be having a sort of reconciliation between what you believe to be true, how you communicate those opinions, how you communicate your ideas without being too harsh with people, without being too blunt or being too hurtful with your words. That can occur for you throughout the month quite frequently, as being harsh with your words. But with the full moon in Libra, you contemplate how you can be more considerate with how you speak to people, considerate with your beliefs and how you share your beliefs, and have individual beliefs and opinions, but also how you consider other people's opinions, consider other people's ideas, and ultimately how you collaborate with other people. Ultimately, though, you can expect to be doing a lot of conflict resolution with your social group and with your peers, especially towards the end of the month with this full moon in Libra. And with that being said, for the full list of events throughout March, I have the list posted on my Instagram at AstroKit, so you guys can go to my Instagram and save that post. Also, like this video and subscribe to my channel if you aren't subscribed yet. You don't want to miss the Mars conjunct Rahu video. And tell me down below how you're feeling about March, what are your intentions for March, etc. And I'll see you Leos in my next video. Hey Virgo, here is your prediction for the month of March and what you can expect in your personal life for March 2021. Now this is more accurate for Virgo risings. You can watch this video for your rising, moon, or your sun sign. It's going to be more accurate or more relevant for rising signs, but you can watch for any of your big 3. So with that being said, we're going to get into these events in March and really get into how they impact you personally on a day-to-day basis. March carries this strong theme of healing. It also carries the strong themes of endings. It is Pisces season in March for most of March, and it's the part of the year where we go from the end of the Zodiac to the beginning of a new cycle, with Aries season just around the corner. And that brings me into the first event, which is the sun being in your 7th house for most of the month. So from about now, February 18th, until March 20th, the sun will be in your Pisces 7th house. So March is a month for you where you're focused on partnerships, you're focused on your social outreach, you're focused on your business partnerships, your business connects, and how you connect with the public. Pisces is a very spiritual energy, it's a creative energy, it's a very fluid energy, so you might feel more inclined to have more closer bonds with people, kind of transcend that barrier between you and other people and create closer bonds with people already in your life, and also make new connections potentially. And that brings me into the next event, which is the new moon. Now this new moon happens in the sign of Pisces, in your 7th house, of course. It's happening on the 13th. This new moon is conjunct Venus, it's conjunct Neptune, so it carries this very fluid, creative, very spiritual theme to it. And having this in your 7th house nonetheless represents you developing and creating new bonds with people, but based on your own spiritual beliefs, based on your own spiritual interests, creating that strong spiritual bond with other people. Pisces has a lot to do with transcendence and transcending barriers, transcending boundaries, and 7th house is literally the house of boundaries. So you might find yourself trying to transcend those boundaries between you and other people, transcend any social stiffness between you and other people, and really reach out to people in a more fluid way, in a more compassionate way, in a way that is non-judgmental, and just connecting with people in a more spiritual, raw, vulnerable sense. And like we were talking about before, Pisces is the end of the zodiac. And this new moon, even though it is a new moon, it has a lot to do with purging, clearing out things in your life, clearing out baggage, ending things, bringing things to a firm ending. And having it in your 7th house, maybe you're bringing some relationships to an end, bringing some karmic relationships to an end, and really clearing out any clogs or baggage within your relationship life, within the social contacts you have. And with the onset of Aries season later in the month, you might find that baggage clearing within your relationship sector of your life is very purposeful for the new relationships coming into your life later, maybe in April or during the spring. So this new moon, ironically enough, it's a new moon, but it does trigger a lot of endings, and especially for you, Virgo, endings in your relationships, but not really in a negative sense, but more so a well-deserved sort of firm ending that's been maybe lagging along, but now is the final moment where you're like, I'm done. And that brings us into Mars. Now Mars is the planet to really watch in the month of March, because Mars will be going into Gemini on March 4th. Now Mars has been in Taurus, and Mars in Taurus was a pretty strong transit just because Mars is strong in Taurus. Mars is grounded, it's directed, it's secure in an earth sign like Taurus. However, when it goes into an air sign like Gemini, it creates more of a scattered energy, a more misdirected energy. It can create a lot of conflict within communication, conflict within social groups, conflict with other people. And it can create this strong theme of restlessness. However, Mars will be going into your 10th house, Virgo, especially Virgo risings watching this. And Mars in your 10th house is actually quite strong. Ultimately, Mars represents energy, pure, unfiltered energy, hence why it can be directed into positive things or negative things. It can really go either way, but having it in your 10th house gives it that flavor, and provides that theme in your life of being very ambitious. You might feel this urge to pursue your desires more adamantly, more strongly, more powerfully, in a more focused sense. You might be putting a lot of energy and taking a lot of action in your career throughout March, especially if you're in a communications career. You might be really putting out a lot of projects, for example, putting a lot of effort into projects, and being more bold and courageous when it comes to publishing new things in your career, publishing new things online, for example, being more bold and courageous when it comes to really achieving what you want in your career, being unapologetic about it, and using that pure Martian energy to achieve things and be very focused when it comes to your long-term goals, your legacy, and your work projects. Now, what I will say is that Mars and Gemini in your 10th house, it is very strong in the 10th house, but the bad part about it, or the challenging part about Mars and Gemini in your 10th house, is that you might have conflict specifically with your coworkers, with your superiors, with your bosses. You might get into a disagreement with your boss, anyone that is technically above you in status. It doesn't just have to be a boss, but maybe like a parent, for example, your dad, for example. Anyone that has authority over you might get into conflict with them. You might have disagreements with them. You might have this very bullish stubbornness when it comes to being amicable with authority figures. So you can expect maybe some clashing with authority figures with Mars in your 10th house. But it is a very strong placement for Mars, but you can expect still the more challenging aspect of it, which is conflict to manifest between you and your superiors or authority figures. And that brings us into the last event of the month, which is the full moon in Libra. So the full moon in Libra is on March 28th. It's happening in your second house, Virgo. And the entire month of March has that theme of conflict, has that theme of disagreements and miscommunications with people, maybe conflict verbally, especially with people because of Mars and Gemini. But Libra ultimately wants to create harmony, wants to create balance, equilibrium. So there's a lot of conflict resolution happening with this full moon at the end of the month. Even if you do have disagreements in your life, maybe you'll be resolving them with this Libra full moon, thinking of how to create more reconciliation with people, create more personable relationships with others, and especially with it in your second house, you're having a reflective moment of what you find valuable, what adds value to your life, and bringing more balance to your finances, especially bringing balance to how much money you make versus how much money you keep or save versus how much money you spend, and balancing out your finances, creating equilibrium with your finances, and not just finances, but also your possessions. So you might be doing some decluttering of your closet, for example, decluttering your makeup, and decluttering a lot of things in your life that doesn't bring you value any longer. So with the full moon in your second house, you can expect to be really contemplating what you share with other people and what you give away versus what you keep to yourself. How do you take into consideration your own self-interest versus other people's self-interest, and how you bring balance to those two things. So with that being said, I have the full list of events happening in March on my Instagram, so you guys can head over there at AstroKit and save that post. And stay tuned for my next video, which will be the Mars-Rahu conjunction. You guys don't want to miss that. Subscribe so you don't. And tell me down below how you feel about March, if you have a good feeling about it, bad feeling about it. Tell me down below in the comments, and I'll see you Virgos in my next video. Hey Libra, here is your March prediction and what you can expect in your personal life for the month of March 2021. Now this will be more accurate for Libra risings. However, you can watch this prediction video for your sun, moon, or rising sign. I usually do the predictions based on rising signs, so that'll be more relevant for this video and for all the predictions on my channel. So let's get into March and see what it has in store for you and see the events astrologically and how they impact you on a regular basis. The first event we'll talk about is Pisces season. So from now until March 20th, the sun will be in Pisces, meaning it'll be in your 6th house. So March for you takes on a lot of 6th house themes. You might be really focused on your health, your diet, your routine, but not just your health, diet, and routine, like the regular routine you have, regular diet you have, but also your spiritual routine, also your spiritual hygiene, what you do to develop and improve yourself spiritually. You're going to be focused on those sort of things. So like if you like to do yoga for self-improvement, if you like to do meditation for self-improvement, there's that strong theme of self-improvement and being productive, but also combining your spiritual practices into that, and overall progressing on your spiritual journey and progressing with your spiritual hygiene throughout March. And that brings us into the new moon on March 13th. This new moon is in the sign of Pisces. It's going to be in your 6th house. And this new moon takes on a very creative theme, a very romantic theme, a theme of spirituality, because it will be conjunct Neptune and Venus. And during this time, even though it is a new moon and it's good for new beginnings, it's in the sign of Pisces, and Pisces ultimately is the last zodiac sign, and it's sort of that moment where we clear out our lives, we declutter our lives, we purge things, and it really represents endings. So having it in your 6th house of habits and health and routine represents you ending and getting rid of any habits that no longer serve you. In this month of March, you're kind of like on this mini mission of becoming more spiritually in tune, spiritually healthy. Spiritual hygiene is the key theme here. And a major theme that we see oftentimes with Pisces in the Pisces archetype is dissolving of boundaries, transcending boundaries. So ultimately with this new moon in Pisces in your 6th house, you are dissolving anything that doesn't relate to your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual hygiene, and overall you are realigning and recalibrating your mental health and spiritual routine and hygiene with this new moon in Pisces in your 6th house. And that brings us into the next event, which has to do with Mars. Now Mars is the planet you want to look out for and watch out for in March, Mars officially goes into Gemini on March 4th. Now, Mars has been in Taurus for about a month or so, and Mars is really strong in Taurus. Mars is grounded in Taurus. Mars is an energy that is very potent. It's impulsive, and when it's in an earth sign, it can be more productive, grounded, etc., secure. And when it goes into Gemini in March, it creates more of a scattered energy, more random energy. And Mars also represents conflict as well. So having it in Gemini does trigger a bit of conflict with our peers throughout March. And Mars, specifically for you, Libra, is going into your 9th house. So what this represents for you is that you have this urge and you have this passion and desire to want to gain knowledge, to expand your consciousness, to even travel. For some people, you might have that urge to want to travel, especially in an impulsive way. And conflict is also a theme with Mars, so you might have a bit of conflict with your teachers if you're in school, with your professors, anyone that is sort of like a guru or a teacher to you might get into conflict with them or have disagreements with them. But Mars in Gemini in your 9th house for you, Libra, really manifests as you being adamant and very strong in your pursuit of knowledge, gaining knowledge. For example, you can be digging deeper and researching into different languages, different spiritual topics of study, philosophies. And now that I think about it, March takes on a very spiritual theme for you, since you have this 6th house energy, which is in Pisces, and the 9th house is also very spiritual. So you'll be doing a lot of spiritual studying, spiritual research with Mars in your 9th house. And Mars will also be conjunct the North Node for a good chunk of the month, which does represent a whole different batch of chaos, which I'll get into in a separate video. My next video will be about the Mars Rahu, aka North Node conjunction. But in general, that's what Mars in your 9th house will mean for you during the month. But stay tuned for that Mars conjunct Rahu video, which will be its own separate video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And that brings us into the final event. So the final event is the Libra full moon. The Libra full moon happens on March 28th, and of course it's happening in your 1st house. This Libra full moon deals a lot with conflict resolution. Of course, you being a Libra, you know a lot about that. You know about being the mediator, being the person who brings balance to things, seeing the balance in things, analyzing the balance, etc. And specifically for you, Libra, this conflict resolution can be between you and a partner, between you and your husband, for example, you and your wife, or anyone that is in a close relationship with you. You might be doing conflict resolution. It's interesting because Mars is going to be in Gemini, so it does stir up conflict in general for the collective. So maybe if you have some disagreements throughout March, you kind of mend them with this full moon. And having it in your 1st house really puts this spotlight on you contemplating yourself and your own individuality and how you balance that with other people. I feel like that's the life journey of a Libra rising, especially, is kind of contemplating your own individuality and autonomy versus your partners, since you have an Aries 7th house naturally, and this full moon is happening in the 7th 1st house axis of your chart. And for a lot of you guys, you might be having a full circle moment of determining what your independence is, your individuality is, and balancing that between how you mend that or mesh that with other people, and where you draw that boundary of like, okay, here's who I am, here's my identity, here's what I look like, versus you and your partners or your close friends, and drawing that distinct boundary between those two things and creating balance between those two things with this Libra full moon in your 1st house on the 28th. And for the full list of events throughout March that you don't want to miss, head to my Instagram at AstroKit so you can save the post. Also, tell me down below how you feel about March. If you have a good feeling about it, tell me down below. And stay tuned for the Mars Rahu conjunction video, which you don't want to miss. I'll be posting it shortly on my channel, so subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you Libras in my next video. Hey Scorpio, here is your prediction for the month of March and what you can expect in your personal life for March 2021. Now this will be more accurate for Scorpio risings. However, you can watch this prediction video for your sun, moon, or rising sign, or all three if you want. But usually I do the predictions based on tropical rising signs, so that is the most relevant when it comes to watching these predictions on my channel, and especially for this video as well. So with that being said, we'll get into the events in March and see how they affect you personally on a regular basis. So the first event we'll talk about is Pisces season. So the sun enters Pisces February 18th. So from when you watch this until March 20th, the sun will be in your 5th house Scorpio. And during the month of March, you'll be really focused on these 5th house themes. You'll be focused on your passions, your desires, your talents, really focused on entertainment, pleasure, dating. The 5th house really brings to mind this theme of pleasure and doing what you want to do, not doing what you have to do, but really just enjoying things, enjoying life, being happy, and really paying attention and putting effort and attention on your personal desires. And so for most of March, that's what you'll be focused on, is the theme of pleasure and entertainment. And that brings us into the next event, which is the new moon in Pisces. The new moon happens on March 13th. It happens in your 5th house. And this new moon takes on this very creative theme, this very romantic theme, this theme of spirituality, because it is conjunct Neptune, it is conjunct Venus. And so you're already having this very creative, very romantic, very pleasurable, enjoyment themed month with this 5th house activated for you. And with this new moon, it just gets more amplified. And during the new moon, you might be manifesting or working on something very creative. Maybe you have a creative idea you want to publish to the world. Maybe you publish something online and you get a lot of attention for it. And this might be something that you channel from the heart, something that is really special to you, something that is really true to your inner child. You might be expressing that. Self-expression is really strong for you with this new moon, and publishing things that really inspire you, or even just show your true individuality. And also with this new moon, you might be very consumed with romance and going on a date, for example, getting gifts from a significant other. Maybe you are dating new people. There's a really strong theme of romance throughout the month for you, but really during this new moon, you're really invested in it, really playing the field, maybe getting asked on dates. Romance is a huge theme with this new moon in your 5th house. And that brings us into the next event, which has to do with Mars. Now, Mars is your ruling planet, so this really directly affects you personally. And Mars is moving into Gemini on March 4th, and Mars is really this planet you want to watch out for throughout the month of March. I'll explain why later, but Mars moving into Gemini creates this theme of scatteredness. It creates this theme of, I would say, like energy that can be misdirected, energy that can cause conflict. Gemini is a sign that isn't as grounded as Taurus, and Mars has been in Taurus for about a month or so. And Mars is really productive in Taurus because it's so grounded and secure. However, when it goes into Gemini, an air sign, it gets a little bit more scattered and misdirected. And what this means for you, Scorpio, is that it's going into your 8th house. And so during Mars being in your 8th house, you will be very focused, have this really strong sense of determination, and also being focused on research, being focused on occult topics, for example, focused on money, achieving your financial goals. You might be focused on transmutation, transforming your life in some way, transmuting some sort of misfortune into good fortune. And I feel like that's what the 8th house really deals with. And that's something I feel like is a very strong Scorpio theme, is you guys transmuting negative energy into better energy, or having negative energy benefit you in some way, because I feel like that's just a skill that Scorpios do have. And this skill is even more amplified with Mars being in Gemini in your 8th house, which is your home house and also your planetary ruler. You can expect to potentially get into more conflicts with your peers though, or conflicts with your significant other, with Mars being in Gemini in your 8th house, or having a very sharp tongue. And it does create a little bit of conflict with other people. So although you do benefit in the sense that you're very focused, tunnel vision, getting money, transforming, transmuting, etc., it does create conflict a little bit with other people. And for a good chunk of the month, Mars will come into conjunction with the North Node, aka Rahu, and I'll be doing a whole separate video about Mars conjunct Rahu because it represents its own separate chaos, its own separate themes, and we're really going to get into it in a separate video, so subscribe so you don't miss that one. But in general, just expect those themes to be really strong in your life, with Mars being in Gemini in your 8th house. And that brings us into the last event, which is the full moon. So the full moon is on March 28th. It's in your 12th house and it's in the sign of Libra. And this full moon deals a lot with conflict resolution. Throughout the month, with Mars being in Gemini and having Mars conjunct Rahu, there's that theme of conflict really popping up in our lives, and especially in your life as well, personally. But with this Libra full moon, it kind of urges us to look more into creating equilibriums between us and other people, creating balance in our lives, and really creating resolutions to any conflicts we've created throughout the month. And specifically for you, Scorpio, since this full moon's in your 12th house, it will be illuminated for you who your enemies are, who your hidden enemies are. 12th house is hidden enemies, and 6th house deals with enemies as well, and having that 6th 12th house axis lit up with this full moon represents you realizing and having awareness of who exactly is against you, who's your opposition, who's for you, and kind of confronting those people, confronting whatever is an enemy towards you. It doesn't have to be a literal person, although it might manifest that way, but it can be, for example, your thoughts. It can be any thoughts that hold you back. It can be yourself. So any enemies in your life will be revealed to you during this full moon, and you'll have that chance to really confront it head on, and creating balance or having some sort of resolution between you and another person, you and some sort of idea or blockage. And even if your worst enemy is yourself, you'll be confronting yourself and really dealing with that head on, facing your fears there with this full moon in Libra. With that being said, for the full list of events happening in March, you guys can head to my Instagram at AstroKit, so you guys can save that post on my Instagram, and stay tuned for the Mars Rahu conjunction video. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and tell me down below how you feel about March. If you have a good feeling about it, if you don't have a good feeling about it, tell me down below, and I'll see you Scorpios in my next video. Hey Sagittarius, here is your prediction for the month of March and what you can expect in your personal life for March 2021. And this will be more accurate for Sag risings, and you can watch this prediction video for your sun, moon, or rising. However, I usually do the predictions based on tropical rising signs, so that's more relevant when it comes to the order you want to watch for this video and for the other prediction videos on my channel as well. So with that being said, we'll get into these events in March and talk about how they impact your life personally. And the first event we'll talk about is Pisces season. So Pisces season officially begins on February 18th. So from about now when you watch this until March 20th, the sun will be in your 4th house, and for most of March you'll be focused on 4th house themes like family, home, maybe focused on your relationship with your mother, focused on your own inner happiness, and being really more inwardly turned. With Pisces energy, it's naturally a little bit more introverted, more isolated energy, and 4th house is also a house that's more introverted, isolated. It's our private life, essentially. So you might be really focused on your private life throughout March, being more private, being more isolated, being more focused on yourself, your own inner happiness, and maybe just being focused on the people around you, focused on your immediate family, focused on your roommates or whoever you live with. And that brings me into the new moon. So the new moon happens on March 13th, and it's in the sign of Pisces, and it's happening in your 4th house. And this new moon has a lot to do with creativity, romance, and it deals with spirituality as well. Since it's conjunct Venus, it's also conjunct Neptune. And for you, this means that you're really reconnecting with your intuition, really reconnecting with your divine feminine energy, connecting with kind of like that fluidity within you and not being so rigid or logical, but kind of focusing more on that divine feminine energy and how you can use it to create what you want, use it to manifest what you want. This is a really great new moon for manifesting, and especially for you, it has to do with manifesting any desires you have that are related to, or that is related to home, family, manifesting a new living environment, anything like that. You might be focused on manifesting those kind of desires with this new moon in Pisces in your 4th house. And you might be also really reconnecting with your inner creativity, your inner child, your inner happiness, and really doing what fulfills you and makes you feel content. And interestingly enough, the new moon is in Pisces, and Pisces represents endings. It represents decluttering, ending things. It's the last sign of the zodiac, and even though it is a new moon, it does take on this theme of ending things and decluttering things. So during this time, also during the new moon, you might be decluttering your home, decluttering your space, and creating sort of an oasis, or really like a space within your physical home that makes you feel very comfortable and happy and somewhere you want to be. In order to create that space, you might be decluttering a lot, deep cleaning your house, getting rid of everything you don't need in order to create this really potent sanctuary and oasis that feels at home for you and makes you feel content. And that brings us into the next event, which has to do with Mars. Now, Mars is the planet to watch throughout March because Mars will be moving into Gemini. Mars has been in Taurus for a good chunk of time, and Mars is really productive in Taurus. Mars is really grounded in Taurus. It's very secure, it's steady, it's stable. However, when it goes into an air sign like Gemini, it gets a little bit more scattered. It gets a lot more misdirected, and it can create quite a bit of conflict with other people, create conflict between our peers, and especially this conflict will ramp up when Mars is conjunct Rahu, which I'll get into in a separate video. But Mars goes into your 7th house, and your 7th house is Gemini, and this creates conflict in your partnerships. This creates a lot of maybe disagreements, ego battles in your partnerships. However, the good part of Mars in your 7th house, it's not all bad. It can be good in the sense that you will feel more bold and have more of decisive energy and assertive energy when it comes to setting boundaries with people and setting boundaries with your partner. If you're someone who struggles with boundaries, or you struggle with setting boundaries with people, and especially when it comes to like your home and who you let into your private life, your private space, you're setting that boundary of like, hey, this is where I belong, this is where my boundary is, can you please not cross this boundary? So boundaries is a huge theme for you throughout March, and you're really having that courage, that boldness, and really that energy to assert yourself, assert your boundaries, and maintain that with people around you and maintain that with your close relationships. However, the bad part about Mars being in your 7th house is that it does create a little bit of overall conflict, disagreements, or ego battles with people around you. So it can go either way throughout March for you, but we'll get more into that in the Mars conjunct Rahu video. And that brings me into the last event, which is the full moon in Libra. So this full moon happens on March 28th. It's happening in your 11th house. So again, this social theme really comes up for you again, since your 7th house is lit up by Mars, your 11th house will be lit up by the full moon. And this Libra full moon really represents this theme of conflict resolution. Libra wants to bring balance. Libra is all about that theme of bringing equilibrium to things. And having it in your 11th house means that you'll be bringing equilibrium or balance to your friend groups, to your social networks. You might be invested in realizing who your social connects are and how you can kind of leverage those things, how you can mend any bridges you've burned with people, and you have that urge to want to reconnect with people and mend any bad blood between you and other people. And that also manifests for a lot of Sagittarius as bringing people together on the internet. 11th house does deal with the internet, social media, so you might be doing something online that kind of brings people together, that creates harmony online. Maybe you start a group on Facebook, or you join a group on Facebook, you join a group on Clubhouse, anything like that, where you're kind of getting together with people and creating some sort of harmony, creating some sort of equilibrium, or having some sort of conflict resolution moment with you and your social network, and doing that online as well. And so with that being said, for the full list of events happening in March that you don't want to miss, head to my Instagram at astrokit so you can screenshot it, save that post, and stay tuned for the Mars Rahu conjunction video. It'll be posted shortly on my channel, so subscribe so you don't miss it. And also let me know down below how you feel about March. If you have a good feeling about it, if you have a bad feeling about it, tell me down below. And I'll see you Sagittarius in my next video. Hey Capricorn, here is your prediction for the month of March and what you can expect in your personal life throughout March 2021. March 2021 carries with it these themes of healing, this theme of spirituality. It is Pisces season during most of March. And with that being said, this will be more accurate for Capricorn risings, tropical Capricorn risings, sun or moons. You can watch this prediction video for your sun, moon, or rising sign, but the prediction is based on tropical rising signs. So that one is the most relevant and the first one you should watch when it comes to these prediction videos on my channel, and especially this prediction video. And so let's let's just get into these monthly events, these astrological events, and see how they impact your personal life. The first event we'll talk about is, of course, Pisces season. The sun enters Pisces on February 18th. So from when you watch this until March 20th, the sun sits in your third house. You have a Pisces third house. And during the month of March, you'll be really focused on your own creative projects, your own social media. For example, if you have a blog, you might be really focused and invested on your blog, your YouTube channel. You might be writing things, doing songwriting, doing screenwriting, channeling a lot of your creative energy into your media projects, communication projects. If you have some sort of podcast, you might be really invested in that. And third house also deals with peers, siblings, and neighbors. So you might be collaborating with your peers, your siblings, your neighbors, and creating some sort of creative project with them, and being more bold when it comes to initiating things, being more courageous. Third house does deal with boldness and courage, so you can expect to feel more bold and courageous when it comes to your life in March, and dealing with publishing new things, collaborating with people, and just kind of being on top of things in that sense. And that brings us into the new moon. So the new moon happens on March 13th. It's in the sign of Pisces, again in your third house. And this new moon has a lot to do with endings. It has a lot to do with decluttering, purging things out. Even though it is a new moon, and that's great for new things, it is Pisces season. Pisces is the last zodiac sign, and Pisces deals with endings and decluttering things. And during this new moon, you're decluttering any thoughts, opinions, or beliefs that don't align with your more authentic self-expression, or even just blocking out any hateful comments you get from people, or hateration opinions people have of your work or have of your social media. There's that theme of you really putting a lot of your passion and efforts into your own creative projects and communication and media projects. And third house does deal with opinions and beliefs. So you might be decluttering opinions, beliefs, and especially opinions and beliefs from peers, and kind of just blocking out all of that negativity and focusing on your own projects, and really putting a lot of confidence in that with this new moon in your third house. Also, this is a time where you might be focusing on a really specific creative project. So let's say you're somebody who's into music, maybe you're into screenwriting, songwriting, art, or anything like that. You might be putting effort into that creative project, maybe prepping it to be posted online sometime during March, by the end of March, prepping a project you want to publish on the internet. That brings us into the next event, which has to deal with Mars. Now, Mars is the planet you want to look out for in March. You want to keep a close eye on it because Mars is going to be moving into Gemini. And not only that, but it's going to be conjunct the North Node Rahu, which I'll get into a second what that means. But Mars moving into Gemini is really significant because it's been in Taurus for a while. And Mars being in Taurus is a really strong placement. It's really productive, it's strong, it's grounded, it's secure, and Mars is able to direct its very potent energy in a more concise and strategic manner when it's in an earth sign like Taurus. However, when it goes into Gemini, it gets a little bit more scattered, a little bit more misdirected. And because Mars will be in Gemini, it creates this kind of theme of conflict or disagreements with people around us. And so Mars being in Gemini in your sixth house is actually quite strong energy. Sixth house deals with obstacles, deals with conflict in general. So when you have a strong planet like Mars in the sixth house transiting there, it gives you the courage and it gives you the energy to overcome obstacles. And it gives you that boldness to face people that you need to face your enemies. Sixth house rules enemies, 12th house also rules hidden enemies. So this could be a time where you're kind of facing your fears, facing your enemies, confronting people. Now this can get a little bit dicey because again, Mars is conflict and sixth house is coworkers. So you might have some conflict with coworkers or disagreement with coworkers or people that just work with you on any level if you don't work in a traditional job, and conflict with employees, for example, if you have your own business. But Mars being in the sixth does represent being very productive, being very ambitious, being very goal-oriented, and really having that tunnel vision, ambition, passion, and desire to achieve your goals. So Mars will really boost your work ethic in March with it being in Gemini in your 6th house, and it boosts your productivity overall. But on the other side of that, it does kind of create conflict with your coworkers and employees if you have them, and just kind of create conflict with enemies or people that are your opposition. And that brings us into the last event, which is the Libra full moon. So this full moon in Libra happens on March 28th. It's happening in your 10th house. So this is sort of like a full circle moment for you. When earlier we were talking about this 3rd house energy of you putting together these creative projects, working on media projects, for example, collaborating with people. And then with this Libra full moon, this is the time where you might publish that project. You might publish your project you've been working on, if it's like a song or something like that, maybe a podcast, maybe a blog. This is the moment where you do publish it. And having it in your 10th house does represent you getting recognition for that project, or getting status for that project, gaining fame, getting attention from important people for the project you do publish online. But on the other side of that, with this Libra full moon, in general, it does deal with conflict resolution. So maybe in the behind the scenes aspect of your life, you might be doing conflict resolution with your family members, with your bosses. If you've had any work conflicts throughout the month, especially with Mars in your 6th house, like we talked about, conflict with coworkers, maybe conflicts with your boss, you kind of mend those conflicts by the end of the month with this full moon in Libra, because Libra ultimately wants to create balance, equilibrium, harmony. So this is the full moon where you do kind of create that balance and draw that boundary between, okay, here's the conflict we had, but here's how we can find the resolution for it. And those are the kind of 2 things you might be dealing with during this full moon is 1, publishing new creative projects to the world, or you can just be doing conflict resolution with people around you, with your coworkers, with your bosses, with your family members also. And with that being said, for the full list of events happening in March that you don't want to miss, head to my Instagram at astrokit to save the post or screenshot it with the list of events on it. And also stay tuned for the Mars Rahu conjunction video. It'll be up shortly on my channel. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And tell me down below how you feel about March. If you have a good feeling about it, if you have a bad feeling about it, tell me down below. And I'll see you Capricorns in my next video. Hey Aquarius, here is your prediction for the month of March and what you can expect in your personal life for March 2021. Now this will be more accurate for Aquarius risings. However, you can watch this prediction video for your sun, moon, and rising sign, or all 3 of those signs. I do the predictions based on tropical rising signs, so that's the first timestamp you want to watch if you're watching this prediction video for your sun, moon, or rising. And this month of March does take on a lot of themes that have to do with healing, conflict resolution. It is Pisces season, so it has a lot to do with endings and closing things out and decluttering our lives. And we're going to get into what exactly that means for you, Aquarius, watching this. And the first event we'll talk about is Pisces season. So from now when you watch this, February 18th until March 20th, the sun will be in the sign of Pisces in your 2nd house. And so during March, you'll be really focused on 2nd house themes like money, finances, possessions. And that theme of possessions is interesting to think about because decluttering is a huge theme with Pisces season. It is the end of the Zodiac. During the month of March, you might have your attention really focused on what you can declutter in your life, what you can get rid of in your life. If you have a bunch of clothes you don't want, a bunch of books you don't want, if you want to declutter your computer, for example, you're doing a lot of cleansing out of things, especially things you've held on to for a long time that have lost value for you. You're getting rid of it in order to get ready for the new season, Aries season, later in March, aka spring also is starting as well. So it's like a spring cleaning sort of month for you, Aquarius. And you're also putting a lot of energy towards realigning your finances as well, realigning and keeping a close eye on what your income is, how much money you spend, how much money you make, and also focusing on the financial aspect of that 2nd house transit. And that brings us into the new moon. So the new moon is on March 13th. It's in Pisces, it's in your second house. And this new moon has a lot to do with romance, creativity, and this really spiritual, fluid theme. Since it's conjunct Neptune, it's in the sign of Pisces, it's conjunct Venus. So for you, Aquarius, this means this is a time where you're potentially really focused on beauty, focused on your beauty treatments. The second house does rule the face, so you might be doing beauty treatments, getting a facial, getting maybe like a high-end facial, for example, getting fillers done to your face. For a lot of you Aquarius, you might be doing a lot of beauty treatments to your face, maybe doing like those subliminal YouTube videos where you listen to it and it enhances your beauty. I can see a lot of Aquarius doing that in March during this new moon in Pisces in your second house. And in general, this new moon does represent for you, even though it is a new moon, it's a new moon where you are decluttering a lot of things in your life and getting rid of a lot of things in your life that you no longer need. And this is also a time where you might be doing exercises that are related to breath work. Maybe you're doing singing lessons, working on your vocal cords, working on your throat chakra. Second house does deal with the voice, so this new moon can represent for you getting rid of any blockages to your throat chakra, getting rid of blockages that relate to things that keep you silent on certain topics. You might be kind of clearing your throat chakra out during this new moon in your second house. And that brings us into the next event, which has to do with Mars. So Mars is the planet to watch in March because Mars is going into Gemini, but it's also going to be conjunct Rahu for a good chunk of the month. And I'll get into what that Mars-Rahu conjunction means in just a second, but Mars moving into Gemini is a huge deal because Mars being in Taurus for the past month or so has been very productive. Mars is really great in the sign of Taurus because it's an earth sign. Mars is very potent, it's very strong energy. So when it's in Taurus, it's very grounded, it's secure, it's stable, it's directed energy. However, when it goes into Gemini, an air sign, it gets a little bit more chaotic, it gets a little bit more scattered, and it's easy for Mars energy to get misdirected when it's in the sign of Gemini. And so Mars is going into your fifth house personally for you, Aquarius. And during this time, conflict might happen a lot between you and your peers. And this is generally for everyone. Conflict is strong with Mars being in Gemini, but for you it might be conflict between you and a partner, conflict with you and certain lovers that you have. And the bright side of Mars being in Gemini in your fifth house, though, is that it puts like a battery pack in your back to achieve your desires. The fifth house does deal with desires, it deals with pleasures, it deals with entertainment, and really like those physical indulgent things we like to take part in. And so you might be really focused on whatever your hobbies are, whatever your talents are, whatever your earthly material desires are. You're focused on achieving those things, and you will achieve those things with Mars being in your fifth house. And it gives you a very adamant pursuit of your desires. And now this can get a little bit tricky because it can lead to overindulgence or being a little bit too selfish or being too materialistic. However, it just depends on your own personal way of handling it. So it can be on its best side of things, like you're getting your desires met, you're manifesting your desires, you're getting recognition and fame for whatever desires you do manifest. And on the other hand, it can overdo itself. And Rahu conjunct Mars especially amplifies that overindulgence theme. So that's one thing to watch out for. And conflict also might ensue with you and your peers or you and romantic interests that you have. And also you might have more impulsivity in general, more impulsivity when it comes to engaging in your indulgent desires and not really having a good boundary on where to stop when it comes to engaging in your desires. And I'll also add that Mars being in your fifth house is somewhat of a strong placement because it does enhance your sense of strategy and it enhances your sense of logic as well. So your sense of achieving your desires is really strong right now. It's just up to you to kind of balance out, like, okay, here's my desires, here's doing too much, here's doing just enough when it comes to this theme of desires and indulging in those desires. But either way, it does trigger quite a bit of achievement for you when it comes to those material desires you have. And I'll make a separate video about Mars-Rahu and the Mars-Rahu conjunction because it's its own event, it's its own chaotic energy that's going to happen with it. But we'll get more into that into the Mars-Rahu conjunction video. I'll have it on my channel shortly, so subscribe so you don't miss that video. And that brings us into the last event, which is the full moon. So this full moon is happening in the sign of Libra, and it's happening in your 9th house, Aquarius. And this full moon deals a lot with conflict resolution in general, but for you, since it's happening in your 9th house, 3rd house axis, you're doing a lot of conflict resolution as it pertains to your beliefs, as it pertains to how you share your beliefs with other people. During the month, you might get into maybe like, I would say, conflict, or maybe even like a Twitter battle or like online disagreement with someone. But by this Libra full moon, you might feel this urge to mend that conflict, to mend that bridge with someone and create a conflict resolution between you and someone else who disagrees on something. I feel like you as an Aquarius, you have very strong beliefs, a strong belief system. You're very rooted and grounded in that. You don't change it for people. But with this full moon, you're kind of realizing like, okay, how can I balance what I believe and stay rooted in what I believe, but also accept others' beliefs and accept what other people have to say. So there's that theme of like beliefs, opinions, philosophies kind of clashing throughout the month for you. But during the full moon in Libra in your 9th house, you kind of try to mend those philosophies, mend those beliefs, and come to a kind of balance and equilibrium between you and someone who might disagree with you on certain ideas, philosophies, or beliefs. And you also might have that moment internally where you kind of contrast maybe two different beliefs that you have. Maybe you believe one thing, one philosophy, then a whole different philosophy, and you feel like it's a paradox or it contradicts itself. So this is a time where you kind of mend that or mesh that and think of like really like that middle path when it comes to your beliefs and philosophies, if you're doing this on an internal level during this full moon in Libra. So with that being said, for the full list of events happening in March that you don't want to miss, head to my Instagram at astrokit so you guys can save the post, screenshot it, and then stay tuned for the Mars Rahu conjunction video. You don't want to miss it, so subscribe so you don't miss it. And tell me down below how you feel about March. If you have a good feeling about it, if you don't have a good feeling about it, tell me down below. And give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you Aquarius in my next video. Hey Pisces, welcome to your March prediction. Welcome to Pisces season. In this video, we're gonna get into what your personal life has in store for you throughout the month of March 2021. And we're going to get into the astrological events and see how they manifest in your life. With that being said, this video will be more accurate for Pisces risings. You can watch this prediction video for your sun, moon, or rising timestamp. I do the predictions based on tropical rising signs, so rising sign is the most relevant for this video and for the other ones on my channel, but feel free to watch it for your sun, moon, or rising. So Pisces, let's get into it. So Pisces season officially starts February 18th, so about by the time you watch this video until March 20th, the sun will be in Pisces in your 1st house. So the spotlight is on you during March. It is your season, so happy birthday to the Pisces, the March Pisces and the February Pisces. And so what this means for you is that you're going to be really focused on your physical appearance during March, focused on not just your physical appearance, but also your brand. What is your personal brand? What is your identity? What do people know you as? You might feel this urge in March and throughout the month to really just express yourself, express who you truly are, express your authenticity. You might be glowing up in March, which I mentioned on Instagram at astrokit if you guys saw that post. But it's a month for you where you're really focused on cultivating your own identity and asserting that into the world. With 1st house transits, they're powerful because they increase your ability to feel confident, to feel assertive, feel like you can do things in the world, which I feel like is so important for you, Pisces, when you have that kind of like fluid energy, especially on your ascendant, like a water ascendant like Pisces. It can be kind of hard for you, or you can be someone who withdraws your identity or just is so fluid with your identity that you don't assert yourself too much. And I think assertiveness is something that Pisces do struggle with, or you might work through throughout your life karmically. And during Pisces season, you have that courage, you have that boldness to just assert yourself where you want to be, feel confident, be like, this is who I am, this is my look, take it or leave it. So you will have that confidence in March. And then the next event we'll talk about is the Pisces new moon. So the new moon in Pisces It's on the 13th, and it's in your first house, of course. And this new moon takes on a really strong theme of spirituality. It takes on the theme of healing as well as endings. It takes on the theme of romance and creativity. It is conjunct Neptune. It is conjunct Venus. And it's interesting to think because Pisces is the last zodiac sign, so Pisces season does deal with a lot of endings and closing things out and wrapping things up and decluttering things. And even though this is a new moon on the 13th, good for new things, it's kind of a new moon where we do declutter things and get rid of old things and end certain cycles that were no longer relevant to us. And with this new moon happening in your first house, you're gaining that confidence to express yourself and be who you truly are and present yourself in a way that is assertive to the world and bold. And also you're just getting rid of any ideas of yourself, any projections of opinions like people project onto you or identities people project onto you. You're kind of like shedding that off and like rejecting that and being like, no, this is who I am and I'm going to show you who I am. Not letting your environment influence you to someone who you're not, but kind of doing it the opposite way. And this new moon also puts you in a more authentic frequency of who you truly are and really tapping into that Pisces authenticity that is really unique but oftentimes doesn't get seen because sometimes you can have trouble with asserting yourself or asserting your identity or being seen in the world. Sometimes Pisces can go kind of ignored in the world, and this is a time period where you are kind of seen, where you are recognized, where you are celebrated, and people admire you, and you're just feeling more confident, and it's a really great, vibrant, revitalizing moment for you, Pisces. And that brings us into the next event. So the next event has to do with Mars. So Mars is the planet to watch in March. Mars is doing quite a bit in March, causing a little bit of chaos, which we'll get into in a second. But what we need to know is that Mars is going into Gemini. Mars has been in Taurus for a while, and Mars is pretty strong in Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign, and Mars is a very strong, potent energy. And so it's really grounded and secure, and that energy is able to direct itself more strategically and more logically when it's in the sign of Taurus. But when Mars goes into Gemini on March 4th, it creates more of a chaotic, scattered energy since Gemini is an earth sign, and it creates more conflict with people around us. And for you personally, Pisces, Mars is going into your Gemini 4th house. And so this creates a little bit of tension within your home life. It might create conflict within your home life. It might create a little bit of restlessness, like you can't sit still at home. You have this feeling of like, I don't want to be home. I want to be doing this. I want to do that. And Mars is going to be conjunct Rahu for a good chunk of the month. And so you might have that feeling of just leaving, taking a trip, taking a break, and really just not feeling too comfortable at home. And I'll be doing a separate video about the Mars-Rahu conjunction. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe so you don't miss it. But in general, just know that Mars being in your 4th house kind of causes that restlessness. And it might cause conflict with family members, conflict with your mother specifically. It also might just cause this kind of feeling of discontentment or not being as content as you want to be. 4th house deals with inner happiness. It deals with how content you are with life. And so when Mars is there, it's a very desirous energy. So you have this feeling of like desiring more, wanting more, not settling for what you have, but really desiring more out of your life and not feeling satisfied, not being able to settle your mind until you have what you want. So there's that really like desirous energy with Mars being in your 4th house, which is good because you do achieve things, but it can be a little bit obsessive, a little bit stressful, and really lead you to not feel too calm internally, but a little bit more restless, a little bit overzealous with what you want to achieve. And like I said, we'll get into the Mars-Rahu conjunction, which complicates those things a little bit more in my next video. But that brings us into the next event and the last event, which is the full moon. So the full moon in Libra happens on March 28th. It's happening in your 8th house. And this full moon in Libra, it's really about conflict resolution. There's this theme of conflict really strongly in March, because Mars is going to be in Gemini. That creates a whole slew of conflict with people. But Libra wants to bring balance. Libra wants to bring equilibrium and bring that sense of harmony between things. And I feel like I see this so much online throughout like the astrology community and like Twitter and stuff. It's like Pisces and Libra is such a similar sign. And I really feel like Libra is very similar to you in the sense that Libra and Pisces do have that kind of inner desire of like wanting to manifest equality with people. And so with this full moon in your 8th house, this can represent you creating a more harmonious connection between you and other people, mending any burned bridges that you have with people. And 8th house deals more with intimacy. It deals with close connections with people. So you might be kind of mending those close relationships you have with people, mending those intimate bonds you have with people, bringing a certain balance there. And I feel like with all this energy in your chart in March, we have to mention this theme of boundaries as well. And I feel like this full moon for you deals a lot with setting boundaries and setting those boundaries of like, okay, here's who I am, which we talked about. Your identity is on the spotlight and a huge theme for you in March. And then also how people treat you and really kind of setting that wall or setting that line in the sand of like, okay, here's how I want to be treated, and kind of verbalizing that to people. I think that's another karmic lesson I think a lot of Pisces learn, is learning how to verbalize what you need from people, verbalize your boundaries, and not being walked all over, or not being disrespected, or being kind of spineless, but kind of having that strong spine and asserting yourself. So this full moon really represents for you kind of setting those boundaries and creating whatever boundaries you need to create in your life with the partners you need to create it with, without being too aggressive, too brash, too harsh, but doing it in a way that is assertive, but not too aggressive. And this full moon is the time for that for you. You also might find during this full moon you're doing a collaboration with someone. You might be doing like a business deal with someone. You might be collaborating on a creative project, signing a contract that involves some sort of business collaboration with your peers or with someone in your work life. And then also 8th house does deal with finances as well. So maybe you're bringing balance to your finances, bringing equilibrium, harmony to whatever money you spend. This could be a time where you do your taxes. Is that too late to do taxes? March is probably a good time for you to do taxes if you haven't done them yet, because it's retrograde now, but this full moon kind of helps you bring balance to your finances, especially like insurance, taxes, and external sources of money, not your own income, but like other people's money that you earn through revenue or taxes or insurance. And so with all of that being said, head to my Instagram, AstroKit, for the full list of events for March, so you guys can save that post, screenshot it, etc. And stay tuned for the Mars Rahu conjunction video. It'll be on my channel shortly, so subscribe so you don't miss it. Also, like this video if you found it helpful, and tell me down below how you feel about March, how you feel about your birthday, Pisces, if you're happy, if you're sad. Tell me down below, and I'll see you, Pisces, in my next video.